Let me just start with a few slides that I have to show you, and then we could probably get on a question answer session. I wouldn't take more than 20 minutes or 25 minutes in this entire session. And then we can have a round of question answers, and I'll try my best to answer this. I'm basically a financial services and insurance professional running my own consultancy with respect to risk and insurance. I do a lot of work in the insurance intermediary space, whether it is setting up of broking companies or whether it's product development. That's very briefly for me. I operate from Bangalore, though I have my client base all across the country. We've all been looking at the current technology revolution that's taking shape with respect to motor vehicles. Especially in the motor industry, you've got various forms of new disruptive technologies that have come about, which is trying to automate the entire driving. We have had to look at a car manufacturer, but today we don't look at a manufacturer at all. It's more an experience. So it's no more of you know four wheels and a steering, but it's more to do with an experience. Hence, the entire gamut of motor and motor liability or motor insurance has been seeing a tremendous change from where we have basically where we're looking at driving by our own versus having to remote control the entire driving experience. That's basically what's coming up. So what's going to happen is, if you look at it, the driverless car or the driverless vehicle is probably going to join, let's say, the drones and the digital surveillance over a period of time, and that's also happening with its own controversies. That's basically going to impact. Now, why I say controversies is very surprising. Let me just give you an example of a drone. Today, if I jump across a boundary wall into my neighbor's house, I'm trespassing, right? So therefore, by law, I can be prosecuted. But imagine if I have a drone and I send it. So the geographical limits of crossing boundaries is horizontal. Now, what if I had to go vertical? And if I take a drone and take it vertical and then a camera shoot my neighbor's house, will I be sued? That's the controversy I'm talking about. So similarly, when you're looking at automobile or when you're looking at driverless vehicles, you are going to get into some sort of controversies that's basically going to impact our lives. We really don't know how, but it is. Now, the future obviously is limited by our own imaginations, and we've been seeing it for the past 4 5 years that the technology has advanced. We've been seeing what's happening, so much so that you have Time magazine sometime last year came out saying that, look, no accidents, no traffic, no deaths. All you have to do is give up your right to drive. Now, is it as simple as that? I really don't know, and that's what we probably would like to deliberate upon. Uh, would there be no traffic, no accidents, no deaths? Uh, it's easier said than I mean, it's hard to believe, but then if people are getting into bringing in technology that can do that, it would very well save lives. Now, basically, what's an autonomous what's a driverless vehicle or driverless car that we speak about? It's nothing but a vehicle that takes you from point A to B without any human input for a particular duration of time. So you're going to be sitting back on your seat, and the controls are going to be handled by the computer or the artificial intelligence, who's going to take you from wherever you want to start with and wherever you want to go. So that's basically what a driverless vehicle is. Within that space, there's so much work happening that, the US Department of Transportation, including the government bodies across the country, in India also, are basically or have basically classified autonomous vehicles or classified driverless vehicles into 5 categories, starting from level 0, where there is no automation, to about level 4, which is basically a fully functional, self-driving, automated vehicle. Now, that's something which they say would come up by 2025, but I think it's coming up faster than we're thinking. We're already looking at level 3, and level 4 is into testing. So where we look at, simple things like where the driver is fully in charge, we move down to, looking at where the computer takes more than one basic control and automates the function, to an area where the vehicle is controlled all the time by fully automated machinery. Now, obviously, that's something which is going to be looked at, but the fact of the matter is that we are today seeing a mix of these vehicles in some form or the other, right? So how soon are we going to look at this totally is all to be it's anybody's guess for that matter. As I said, 2025, no way it's going to happen faster. Probably in the next 2 years, we would see all these vehicles coming up. But then would these vehicles replace the existing vehicles? That's a big question. Would these vehicles stop us from not using our handheld or our manually controlled vehicles? That's to be seen. But then it's, as I said, it's anybody's guess. What are certain benefits, if at all there are any benefits with respect to having driverless cars? And if you notice that on a medium term basis, the Swiss Re study, they say that you would have driverless parking, delivery of persons of goods, electric cars. You have free time for the driver, meaning that you don't have to search for parking space. It's going to be automatic and it's going to be smartly driven. Self-driving cars would probably enhance the mobility of people who are either handicapped or who are blind. So much so that it says that it would reduce emissions. New mobility concepts can or will definitely reduce emissions to a great extent over the medium term. Finally, they say that, look, it's going to save up your time. Now, how do you save up your time? If you look at a city like Bangalore, where you actually take on an average 3 hours to drive from point A to point B, rather from your home to your office, you probably might save up time per day driving in that fashion. In US, they say that you probably have about 1.5 hours of driving time saved up. Now that's something to be seen. Reduction of traffic jams. I really have my doubts on this, but then they say reduction of traffic jams. There will be freer roads. Would be smaller, lighter cars that would be built in. Therefore, it would actually be more energy efficient. And then they say that ownership changes. There will be a mobility of demand. Now, the new business models, which basically would speak about the way millennials look. I'm not going to own a car, but I'm going to use an Uber. So will self-driving change all this? Will the Ubers and the sharing services increase in their businesses? And would we reduce our number of privately owned cars? It's all to be seen. Taking the discussion further with respect to the accident reduction rates, there has been some amount of projection done. It says that, look, from a medium to a long-term basis, and that's up to 2034 that they're saying, the number of vehicles are going to come down. Or rather, the accidents are going to come down with respect to the number of automated vehicles on the road. But then there have been enough of instances which speak otherwise, because there is, I think, a lot of technology advances that is yet to be built in, or capabilities to be addressed. Now, whether the Swiss Re reports turns out to be correct or not correct, I'm trying to hit upon a very simple case wherein assume that a steering wheel is hacked in a driverless vehicle, and the car owner probably did not update the software. The question is then, who's liable? Is the hacker liable? Is the car owner liable? is probably he's probably sitting in a shared service. So is car share service liability coming up? Is it the manufacturer? Is the OEM? Are these any other feature that's basically creating a potential liability? These are certain things which are still being studied upon. These are certain things which are still to be improved upon. Therefore, all that we say at the end of the day is, look, we will still have claim managers analyzing cases. You may have these automations on the driverless vehicle, but at the end of the day, if there is a crash, there is going to be a physical inspection. Until unless you have a total automated system, crash, there is an immediate red flag that goes on to the ambulance, plus an immediate red flag that goes on to the surveyor and the insurer, and everybody either sends the drone and an ambulance comes out, picks out people and go. It's a little far-fetched, but then obviously it'll happen over time. But for the time being, you are going to have the claim manager still looking at the claims or the accident. So that physical intervention is obviously going to be there. Now, there are two concerns basically with respect to driverless vehicles. I'm not going to go into details, but then this is basically the fact today. And fact is very simple. If you're looking at a motor third-party liability, though it's complicated at one point of time, and it'll get even more complicated when it comes to a driverless vehicle, because in a normal case, the liability either rests with the driver or the owner, right? Until unless the crash can be tracked back to a product negligence. Right now, if you're using a driverless vehicle and you get into a third-party liability, how are you going to take this? Who are you going to make responsible for the crash? That's the challenge when it comes to looking at the vehicles and the liabilities. Is there going to be enough of handover time? That means between an accident taking place and an estimate coming up, it's going to be difficult. Between a recovery action versus a liable producer or a manufacturer, the question is this transition time going to be there? If it's going to be there, then there's going to be a problem. Whereas the entire mechanism or the entire driverless vehicle that you're using today is going to be lighter, it's going to be smarter. Therefore, the question is, there is a huge product liability coming up. A design effect, missing instructions, incorrect instructions, manufacturing defect. Therefore, here you will have to hold the OEM fully responsible for the crash. And there has to be a mechanism where the entire set of information has to be mapped, recorded, and responsibly accountability is fixed in. These are challenges. You need to consider different parameters also when you're looking at, what's the liability going to happen. The reason why I'm only doing a basic groundwork here is because there's nothing much that's come about saying that, look, we are going to face these problems. These problems are there, but then people have to actually sit and start, and we are still in the researching phase. For example, the question of fault is basically a very novel and a challenging question in times of a driverless vehicle. Why? Because there's no driver. Two, the car runs entirely on software assist. So the question is, whose fault is it? Is it the car? Is it the software? Is it the software programmer? Is it the manufacturer? Whose fault is it? Now, if there is a product liability, which obviously has and may have several bases, the cause of action has to be pursued. And then that will be influenced by the third injured party's identity. Again, I'm coming back to the same. Was it a driver? Was it a passenger? Or was it a third party? Within this space, the actuaries are going to have a tougher time to understand, because they will have to have data, or they will have to take calculations and replace calculations with respect to hacking of cars, with respect to analyzing which parts of the country has better satellite imagery, you know. Therefore, how do you price, which geographic location, which country has better GPRS system, where will I get proper and accurate, where does GPRS not fail, where does it fail. It's going to be quite challenging for the actuaries to look into this. Finally, the question is, how do you identify the difference between the quality of the safety feature across driverless cars? Is there a quality assurance standard that has come about saying that if you have an L1, L2 or a L4 vehicle, XYZ are the quality assurances, XYZ are the deliverables, the manufacturer has to provide these. Today you have we have within a manual cars, we have pass steerings, we have, let's say, uh, automatic entries, exits, we have seat belts. These are mandated and these are structured in a particular fashion as a guideline. Within driverless vehicles, it's still evolving. So therefore, the quality and the safety features, if I have to try to see whether I have them on a common platform, is again quite critical. Therefore, continuing with the liability, I'm going to have a bigger problem. And my bigger problem is this: if a party gets injured in a crash, I foresee the following 5 odd arguments. Was it a negligence? Was it a breach of contract? Was there a safety defect? Was there a breach of statutory guarantee, which certain countries have? Was there a misleading or a deceptive conduct? I could have a defect in a failure of the AV that breached a duty of care. I could probably have a supplier problem. These are huge challenges that need to be structured. Now, obviously, there have been crashes. Why I'm saying it has to be structured? Because there have been crashes and there have been reports of damages. There have been reports of loss of lives. In both the cases that you see on your screen reflect to Tesla. And you need to think about what's the liability that's going to happen. In one case, this person lost his life, wherein the car's sensors failed to distinguish a 18-wheel truck against a bright sunlit sky. Now here, who's responsible? The manufacturer, the driver, or the third party? And this is a case that's going on. In a second instance, 2 people lost their lives. When police investigated, they found out that the driver and the co-passenger were so drunk that it is unlikely that the autopilot got turned on or they switched it on. Now here again, the question is whose liability it is. We may say, okay, it was the drunkenness of the driver and the co-passenger, but at the end of the day, there are bigger issues. And this is something that needs to be brought out. This is something that needs to be simulated. This is something that needs to be recorded. A standard needs to come about. Otherwise, it's very difficult to assume liability. Therefore, the question is, are we ready? Are we ready as insurers? Are we ready as an industry? Are we ready to take care of these driverless vehicles? My opinion, and this is my personal opinion, we are not ready. We are not ready because why? Take Motor Vehicles Act for instance. It mandates 18 years of age for you to get a license and an age limit. When it comes to a driverless vehicle, what are you going to consider? Are you going to consider 5 years? Are you going to consider 18 years? That's the biggest challenge. How will you enforce responsibility on the owner of the vehicle to ensure full compliance? There are certain sections of the Motor Vehicles Act, especially with respect to third party and things like that, which need to get amended and changed. More so that you need to also understand that there are state governments who actually have the power to restrict the use of vehicles in the interest of public safety. Now imagine if 3 or 4 vehicles which are automatic, they meet with an accident, the state government is going to go into total overdrive and probably restrict the sale of these vehicles. Then what happens? You see, regulations are not there properly drafted for us to be ready. Consumer Protection Act. What's the issue of liability that will lead to legal complications here? The product, the manufacturing defect, the design defect, the failure to warn, misrepresentation, unfair trade practices. How are you going to handle this? Finally, here, look at it's basically the manufacturer, the body, and the technology. So therefore, how are you going to define defects of goods in or deficiency in service? So much so that look at it globally, Google, Volvo, and Mercedes have pledged to accept all liabilities in the event that the vehicles were to cause an accident. That's a very strong commitment to give. But would that happen in India? And if it's happened, this is not happened in India. But look at the kind of readiness we have. The IT Act again needs to be overall on privacy and data protection. The definition of hacking needs to be enlarged. You will have to bring in stricter laws with respect to utilization of passenger data. You will have to bring in stricter laws with respect to threat of hacking, cyber espionage, warfare. Today, this is very simple. I can log in into the traffic system and play around with the traffic lights. So much so I can play around with your car if it's driverless. How do we take care of a system where we have a geospatial information that's accurate and clear and clean, which can help my actuaries take care of the pricing and the overall collection and interpretation of data for their modeling? If you look at India, we are still in a discussion stage of bringing this bill. As I said, whose data are you going to work upon? I am the one who's going to sit in the car. You're using my personal data. Do you have the authority? If you have the authority, then look at it this way. It's the driverless vehicles is basically for the so-called millennials. Imagine if these people or these children or these young adults are less than 18 years. I will have to seek a consent from their parents to ensure that they use the vehicle and to ensure that the data comes in. Therefore, for the young millennial or the young adult, if he has to utilize a driverless vehicle, he has to first get his parents' permission so that he approves you to take the data and to utilize the data and provide him a riding experience. Therefore, how do you design motor vehicles with an autonomous or such autonomous vehicles with these privacy frameworks in line? That's the basic challenge. I come back to basically the three laws of robotics. Isaac or Asimov came about 70 years back, which is coming to reality today. That a robot may not injure a human being, right, through inaction. Okay, a robot may obey orders and a robot may protect on its own. But the larger question is that look at it when you're talking of driverless vehicles, between a driver and a pedestrian, both are at risk. Now the question is, who deserves to be saved first from the electronic brain? Then there is another dilemma. And if there were 4 people in the car versus a single pedestrian in danger, what choice will the machine have? The problem is, what choice will the machine have in this case is very easy, because you would land up saying that no, it's basically the person who's inputting the data or programming it, he's going to put it. But then how are you going to simulate this? Therefore, you see, the challenge basically is to define algorithms that will guide these so-called driverless vehicles with respect to moral dilemmas. Then this is the third area. And this is a third liability that you need to think of. Product liability is one side, third party is the other side, moral is the other side. Finally, the question is, will it actually succeed? Delhi has about close to 80 lakh vehicles in the road. Bangalore has about 75 lakh vehicles on the road. You think driverless vehicles are going to succeed in the current situation? I doubt. Either I scrap the entire set of ownership and then say no, only driverless vehicles will have, or I will have to create another infrastructure. Today, we cannot create another infrastructure for a country like India. Constructing a metro in a congested road on a congested road itself is challenging. How are you going to have driverless vehicles? But the fact is that it's a reality. You can't run away from it. And auto insurances are going to change. It's no more going to be the CC. It's no more going to be the carrying capacity. It's basically going to be, what is this vehicle all about? What is the technology input all about? And the claims are going to be higher. It's no more going to be a 2000 rupee bumper that's going to be replaced. It's going to be the entire body along with the technology software that we are talking of that needs to be replaced in an accident. Therefore, these cars are not going to be, let's say, futuristic or flights of fancy. It is reality. Only thing is, when will auto insurance change with respect to the liability? It's basically how and when it will change, and that's the real question. Now, how and when is basically if you land up identifying the kind of liabilities which would impact the insurance. But the question is, what's the liability in these cases? It's anybody's guess. I again come back to the same sentence. It's anybody's guess. And here it is not only insurance. You need to understand it's going to be insurance versus legal versus the government versus the infrastructure. All need to work as a whole and adapt to this current change. And that's where, the challenge is. Everybody today is looking at this entire piece of development, especially driverless, and everybody's shooting in the dark. We really don't know where we are going to get hit, but I guess at every step we need to learn, pick up data, and then improve upon. That's basically how you look at the emerging risk within the driverless community. Thank you so much for your time. I'm open to questions now. Jaswant, I could take up questions now. Dr. Vijay, you'll have to unmute yourself.
I think others has any doubts? Sir, one small question from my side.
Yes, madam.
That means India is not ready for the driverless car, because when we look at the way the liability and the problem relating to the legal aspects, or it might be the government and all those things, infrastructure, that means we are not ready right now. Is my thinking is right?
There are two ways to look at it.
Yes,
there
sir.
are two ways to look at it. See, I cannot stall, or I cannot, I cannot stop innovation, and I cannot stop the new technology that's coming in. Also, the fact that I cannot underestimate, or I cannot overlook the fact that the current transportation system is a problem, right? Having said that, whether we are ready, I think we are still at L1 stage.
Yeah.
Okay, we are still at L1 stage. What we require is the foresight by the government and by the lawmakers and by the insurers to foresee and to draft out the plan today for L4. What's happening, for example, what's happening today is when government of Karnataka started the metro construction in long back in 1998, 2000, they only looked at a 6 kilometer metro.
Exactly.
After spending 20 years on a 6 kilometer meter metro, they looked at only 4 coaches.
Yeah,
Now the
sir.
demand went to 8 coaches, and they were running at 4 coaches, totally undercapitalized. You know, so the issue
Yeah,
is that if you have to do future thinking, you have to do future thinking with. So you have to bring in a lot of people in play to get their thoughts together and look at it in that fashion.
yes,
India
sir.
India could be ready over the next 4 5 years, provided our infrastructure is strengthened, provided the lawmakers sit down with the politicians, sit down with the insurers, and draft out a policy that is futuristic.
True. Very true. Very true. Uh, any questions, participants, students? Some students are also have also joined.
That's nice.
Uh, few students also have joined. Any questions, students? You can unmute and you can ask the questions to Mr. Tarun Singh. Okay.
Okay, I've got a question. It says, do you feel, isn't it more reliable and cheaper to use services like Ola and Uber than purchase a car? Karan, very true. Given, I'm assuming that you are a millennial, and the behavior of millennials is very clear. That look, why do you want to own anything?
True.
And so I'm fully with your statement that yes, the purchase of Ola and Uber is happening, but also look at it this way: Ola and Uber are looking at a driverless system because they are wanting to get into the game of bringing you total comfort. So the concept of Ola and Uber with a driver today across the world, in Bangalore, in India, is there, but then they are coming out very heavily on the driverless side. So to that aspect, yes, businesses have to boom. But look at it the other way from a finance angle. Look at Lyft. Lyft came out with an IPO, and within 1 month the prices crashed. So the valuation where it was 4, 5, 6 billion came down to about 1.5 billion. And then they had to stall their expansion. So that's basically what's. You also need to look at it from a business angle. Okay, so I've got another one. What kind of cyber risks? What kind of cyber risks will be there in case of driverless vehicles? As I mentioned, the simple fact: you have a product problem. Okay, that's the risk. You have everything that's in the environment as a risk. Your hacker is your risk. Your product is your risk. Your software is your risk. Your algorithm that goes into the software is the risk. The components that you use is the risk. The road itself or the infrastructure itself is the risk. The sensing capability of your transport system is a risk. The laws that you draft is a risk. So the risk is something that you need to define today. uh, that's the challenge, and that's what I'm saying. Everything is the risk. Predominantly, if you look at it, the risk is getting transferred from the driver the pedestrian to the manufacturer. Today, if you have an accident, you don't go to the manufacturer and say, hey, Honda, you gave me a wrong car. But with a driverless vehicle, you will have to go back to the producer and say, look, you gave me a car which actually went and crashed. So you need to compensate me. Would large scale automation lead to mass employment? No. Nothing will lead to mass employment. Look at it this way: people started going on strike when computers came in the banks.
Yeah.
The banks still employ the same number of people, even with the computers, even with the AI, even you need people to input into the system, right? You need people to code. So it is going to shift into a different direction. Employment will come down there, but it will shift into a different sector. Look at it that way. there is current saying also the thought to the owner that the autopilot be successful without causing. Even with autopilots in the aircraft, you go and crash. So I don't see it going to be 100% foolproof. Nothing is 100% foolproof. The liability will remain with the owner and the technology provider. Sorry, liability would remain with the technology provider, not the owner. How is the owner responsible with the technology? Today, everybody who has an Android or an iPhone goes on to an automatic update function. They don't go every time to Play Store and see, okay, is my app updated, not updated, let me update it. So here also with a driverless car, I will assume that I'm getting auto updated as long as I am on a Wi-Fi area or connectivity is there. So the liability will definitely fall on the provider, and believe me, if it falls on the provider, there is gonna be a cost. We may say no, it's gonna be cheaper. It's gonna be a cost, and the costs are gonna be higher. Even the premiums are gonna be higher. As far as I used to look at it, premiums are gonna be higher. Looking ahead with the advancement of the metro, where you can travel end to end in just 1 hour, why would you think of people would go for a driverless car? Very good question. But the fact of the matter is, look at it this way: metro is dependent on the government. By the time the metro comes up fully functional in, let's take Bangalore or let's take Delhi. Delhi is fully functional today. When they planned Delhi, Rajiv Chowk in Connaught Place, they said that Rajiv Chowk in Connaught Place will have a footfall of 10 lakhs. So they created infrastructure and they planned out for 10 lakhs. The day metro started, they were hitting 25 lakhs daily footfall. And today they're talking of about 55 lakhs daily footfall. So therefore, how do you build capacity? Governments don't have money to build capacity. Overnights, you will not have coaches coming in and get attached to the existing metro line. Yes, I can do a Delhi one end to end within 1.5 hours. But then there are challenges. How you plan, what infrastructure you have. Now, a driverless vehicle is more. Why do you have an iPhone or why do you have an Android? It's an ease. Why don't you have the normal, Nokia 2310? So here again, it's an experience that it's an experience built in. That's what I said. It's no more a manufacturer giving you a car with 4 wheels and you're driving. It's driving experience that coming in. Otherwise, why do you think Google is coming out with a transport? It's called a mobility system. It's not a transport vehicle. It's a mobility system. It's a mobility solutions provision. So here again, I don't want to break my hand pressing the clutch and the accelerator, and then getting arthritis by the time I touch 40. So it's the ease to which your life is going to transform, and that's the reason why people would take up the driverless vehicle. Karan has I think Satyan has another question. Looking at the sustainability available, whether the government sell petroleum products at 80 plus, people have started shifting towards public transport rather than buying for a car. Very true. I have shifted into on a cycle. I've given up my 4-wheeler. I cycle across Bangalore. So I do about 34 kilometers on a daily basis and I cycle across Bangalore. So I'm happy that way. So yes, but then the question is, do you like the public transport that's available today for you? It's a cattle van. Get my point? If I want a public system which I want to use, I want to be treated as a fellow humans at par. I cannot be treated as a cattle class. Would you want to get into a non-AC bus in a city like Bangalore? You won't. Would you want to get into the metro today in the morning in peak hours where they are stuffed like animals in the zoo? You will not. It'll take time. It'll take time. People are shifting. I'm not saying no, but then the amount of commute time that you're taking to commute, the quality of commute. Quality is important. Okay. Otherwise you're going to be incurring a health cost there. If the quality is not important in your daily commute through a public transport. And your public transport should be efficient. That means at Every 5 minutes, if I'm getting a bus, it means every 5 minutes a bus is coming. You know, how many times have you found a bus passing by your bus stop and not stopping for you and going somewhere else? Those are challenges. Those are practical problems, and that is why I say we need to have every stakeholder sitting across and seriously getting into a future planning. Driver cars will be costly, premium compared to now will be cheap. I really don't know if driver cars are going to be costly. Uh, you never know because there is no data today which says that driverless cars are safe. Tell me today if driverless cars are safe. Who has the data? Therefore, I really don't know whether it's going to be cheap. If not, I really don't know whether for that matter, one could also say that there might not be a motor premium at all. Can driverless cars coexist with other human-driven cars in India with the lack of adherence to traffic rules? Very good question. Your AI that is going to be built into this driverless cars has to be so great that it should be able to sense pavement driving. It should be able to sense red signal jumping. It should be able to sense an immediate cow coming into your in front of your car. So the challenges in India are greater than the challenges abroad. But yes, they can kind of coexist. It's not the lack of adherence. I mean, there is a serious lack of adherence. I wouldn't say for any other reason. It's just the patience. And second is enforcement. We don't have an enforcement mechanism wherein we ourselves are afraid to jump the red light. So therefore, our algorithms have to be very, very smart. How about driverless cars and full automated cars? Now, driverless cars are going to be automated totally by 2025. That's what the projections are, that the entire set of cars that are going to come out are going to be totally automated. So you just have to, say, whatever you call the car, kindly open the door, and opens the door, and you sit and you say, okay, take me to such and such place. It takes you without you touching a single button. You can have your coffee, you can have your tea, you can have whatever you want in the car. Any other questions?
I think the question answer. No more question. Okay, one more question has come up.
What do you think? How reliable would be driverless cars? Because if we see Tesla a lot, so it's anybody's call. Unless you test it, you do not know. Reliability is something that needs to be measured after due testing. So that's again where I'm coming back to. Do we have a standard which says that you have to do 100 tests? Do we have a standard that says you have to test in such background and such environment? Is there a mechanism that says this is the quality standard beyond, unless you're certified in this fashion, you cannot come about? So you see, everybody is into the testing mode, and data is being captured. It's a real-time basis. Data is being captured, studied, crash reports. So you will have a reliability issue, yes, but will these cars be reliable? They should be reliable. I'm assuming they should be reliable because that is what their function is. They have to be reliable than the humans, better reliable than humans. So yes, reliability, yes, is a factor, but then who's going to define it? Are there standards? There are vehicles that have come about in the market, but then are there standards? Everybody has their own standards. So how will you define reliability? So we are still working on the data. And that's why we say probably every country by about 2025, would come about. But is it going to change the entire transportation mechanism and infrastructure? I doubt. It will have an impact, but not to that great extent. Or it may have an impact. It is not going to change and drastically remove the manual cars, and then it's going to take time. It will not happen overnight. Over 10 years or 11 years or 12 years, you might have this change happening, and then everything will get adapted accordingly. But yes, what is successful in US might not be successful in India. So reliability is going to be a bigger concern. Localized testing is going to be a bigger issue. I hope I've answered questions up to everybody's satisfaction.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm also guessing as much as everyone else is guessing. So it's just that whatever little information I have, I'm just sharing that.
Okay. I think with the permission from all, can we end the session? Is there any questions? Okay. Shall I consider any last question to sir? Okay, sir. We have come to an end of the session. First of all, I would like to thank everyone and happy Teachers Day to all of you. And I was a bit late because I was stuck in the traffic and I couldn't come out of my responsibilities. And this was the first session, sir, from we have started as an insurance Pathashala, and we wanted to learn a lot on the insurance. So that's how we made that we can have a webinars and the experts coming in and giving a some light on the knowledge what we are having it. So today's session, it was a thought-provoking and it is really interesting session, sir. And we were not thinking about in so many spheres it will be taking it to. So when you are telling about the legal aspects and it might be about the product, liability, moral responsibility, and government responsibility and the infrastructure and all that. So really it is thought-provoking, and I think many more questions might be coming up to us because it is such an interesting subject. I think there won't be an end to this if we go on. So thanks a lot, sir. Thanks for giving your time to enrich us with the knowledge. And really, on behalf of the Pathashala group, we would like to say thank you to you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dear members, thank you so much for attending to these sessions. So we will be coming up with a lot of the sessions like this so that we will be able to learn a lot in this kind of the webinars. So this will be very helpful for us because we can call it as an elite group, or it might be the galaxy of the knowledgeable people will be coming into this kind of the seminars or webinars, and we will be able to enrich ourselves with knowledge. See, knowledge is the one like a bandar. It will never, what is that? It will never ends. So we will start with this on an auspicious day. Happy Teachers Day to all of you. We are ending the sessions. So next we'll come up with new topic, which we are going to announce it in the group. Thank you very much. Thank you, students, for giving your time also. So I would like to thank even Jaswant also, who has taken a lot of initiative and conducted this program. Thank you very much.